Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is The Flock. The Flock is a little controversial, this one. It's by a small indie dev called Vogelsap. And the controversial element of this game is that it will eventually end, and you will not be able to play it anymore. Huh. Haven't heard of too many games trying that one, but needless to say, some people didn't like that idea. I mean, can you really blame them? Honestly? Hey, yeah, you gotta pay some money for this. This is not free, by the way. You gotta pay some money for this, and eventually you won't be able to play it. That will happen once the population reaches 0. This is the player count. This represents every death in the game. Yes, all 215 million of them. A little generous. I have a feeling they're probably overestimating the number of people that would actually play this. And I'll show you why in a minute. But once the game is over, they'll apparently provide a satisfying conclusion, and then it's it. The game will go offline. Interesting gimmick. Doesn't really serve a practical purpose, I don't think, but an interesting gimmick nonetheless. Let's have a quick look at the options menu, then we'll jump into the game, what there is of it. Graphics options. Quite an impressive little menu here, really. I had some resolution problems with this game. It defaulted to my monitor's resolution, which is 2560x1440, but the game's frame rate was tanking to unplayable levels. Now, when I changed it to 1080p, it went back to normal. And every time I went out of a match and went into a new one, it started kicking in that weird frame rate problem again. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that. It's a little buggy. The game has also crashed on numerous occasions already. I've had 3 crashes, I think, in a 30-minute period at one point, which was pretty impressive. Outside of that, you got anisotropic filtering, texture resolution there. I mean, if that's full, I don't know what the hell quarter is. I don't even want to try it, because it's not a beautiful-looking game at all, really, at least in terms of its texture resolution. Anti-aliasing options, a few different ones here. FXAA, NFAA, SSAA, and DLAA. I don't even know what DLAA is. It's very fancy, isn't it? You got your bloom and shadow distance, shadow cascades, and then detail draw distance, and so on and so forth. We can crank that up a little bit, I think, without too much of a problem, he says, before it crashes or whatever. And that's pretty much it. Conspicuous by its absence is a field of view slider. This is a first-person game, but it is perhaps to be expected, maybe, simply because this game is a multiplayer horror game of sorts, and constricted field of view is a mechanic in the game. In fact, as you play one of these little sneaky flock members, if you stop moving, your field of view actually narrows, and there's a reason for that, and I'll show you why. Keyboard and mouse, not really a great deal to see here. Although what I will say is the tutorial is completely wrong. The flock call and decoy, these 2 abilities that you get, it claims these are bound to Y and B. This is wrong, they're bound to Q and E. So I don't know why the tutorial is claiming that, but it's pretty damn annoying. Outside of that, pretty much what you can expect here, and these are rebindable. Alright. So that's about it then. Let's dive into the game, go to quick match, and this is a multiplayer title, as I mentioned. We need 1 more player to start. This game does not have a particularly large map pool, I have to say. I think there's about 5 of them total. You can vote random. We're just waiting for people to join. Otherwise, we're not going to be getting very far. I was able to jump into a game fairly easily earlier. In fact, you know, while we're doing that, let's have a look at Create Game and see the options. Oh, wait, there aren't any. Never mind. Let's jump back into quick match. Come on. There's got to be more than 2 players playing this game, right? Maybe not at the moment, unfortunately. Perhaps you will see why in a moment. While we're waiting for a player, why don't we talk a little bit about this idea of the game permanently ending? Now, needless to say, a lot of people have been bemused by this, perhaps at best. When they saw this, they thought, well, this is ridiculous. Why on earth would you buy a game that you know is going to end and be unplayable at some point? Well, it's strange that you would say that, because planned obsolescence is not new. It just seems to me that this is actually the only game that's honest about it. We've had plenty of games go offline. EA Sports games go offline all the bloody time. They're racing games and all sorts of things like that. There are plenty of games that have planned obsolescence, whether they be premium titles or free to play. But a lot of those games also have a single player of some description, and a lot of them also perhaps have a LAN mode, so you can maybe get around it with something like Tungle or Hamachi or Game Ranger. This is the reason why you can still play things like Star Wars Battlefront online, and the game crashed. Alright, we managed to get into a game, and it didn't crash, which is lovely. Although as soon as I entered the game, I had that frame rate problem I was talking about, so I had to go into the options menu and apply my resolution even though it was already set to that. So that was just peachy. Alright, so you start off as a member of the flock, and there is a player in the game called the Carrier who grabs this lamp-type artifact and shines it around the place. He looks to try and find other artifacts which allow him to gain points. And if he shines this on me while I'm moving, I will die very, very quickly. As a member of the flock, it is my job to kill this fellow and take the lantern and become the Carrier. Now, the interesting little idea here is something that perhaps you might be familiar with if you happen to be a fan. Sneaky, sneaky. Did I get him? No, I didn't. Did I? Yes? Maybe? No. Okay, never mind then. Yes, I died. There we go. And I'll respawn, and there's a permanent member of the flock dead. Anyway, this is an idea that you might be familiar with if you used to watch Doctor Who, or maybe still do. There were a race of beings in that called the Weeping Angels. And there was an episode of that called Blink, which was absolutely terrifying. And the idea was that if you looked at an angel, it would be a frozen stone statue. But if you didn't, it could move. And it was creepy as hell. It really, really was. And this game takes that similar idea. So, in this case, if I stop moving, I become stone. And that means that I can't be killed by the light. If I'm moving, I can be killed by the light. The artifact also has a sort of little motion detector on it, so it can kind of try and figure out where you are. So you do need to watch out for that. Now, looks like that I got... No, oh, that was the end of the game. Okay, yeah, that happens. The rounds are really short. They're like 6 minutes at most, so I'm not too surprised by seeing that. I think the frame rate problems happened again. I guess we're going to find out once we get into this, because the game suddenly got less responsive. Anyway, yes, as I was saying, as we wait for another player who can actually tolerate this thing. When you stop moving, you're immune to the light, but your field of view narrows, and you obviously can't move. If you're moving, you can be killed by the light very, very easily, in fact. So, the goal is to stalk the player that has the light, and kill him, becoming the Carrier. And then everybody else, which as you can see goes up to like 5 players at most, is a member of the flock. Now, to make the experience a little bit easier for the flock members, the maps are covered in fake flock statues. So you will see people, at least you think they're players, but you don't know. They're just stationary. And you can sometimes get these really awesome, terrifying moments, whereas the Carrier, you turn around and you see a statue that you didn't think was there before. But was it there before? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. You just don't know. And it kind of starts to drive you mad, and I'm gonna be honest, it's actually a pretty effective horror experience. So far, so good, right? No. Those moments are few and far between, mostly because you are almost never the Lantern Carrier. It's actually quite difficult to kill the Lantern Carrier, at least anyone that's remotely competent, so the chances are you're just going to be dying quite a bit, so you don't really get that experience. Now, as a flock player, you sneak and you sneak and you sneak, you try not to get spotted and you stop moving. It's very similar to a game called Red Light, Green Light, a little schoolyard game in the UK. And that's really the only experience. You've got a couple of abilities. You can do the flock call, which will enrage people. It'll also show you why people are leaving the games, I don't know. But anyway, it'll show you where the other flock members are. And you can also create a decoy, which you can then teleport to. Those are your 2 abilities. As the Lantern Carrier, you can extend your beam to go further, but it'll become narrower. Or you can make your light very, very wide, but you will lose distance on it, which is a cool little idea. And outside of that, you run around as the Carrier trying not to die and trying to gain points by shining your light on artifacts, and that's it. That's the problem. That's it. Like, this game has very little to it. Now, you've seen most of the experience. We might actually get a game if this guy sticks around. That would be nice, wouldn't it? And game is starting. Game is... There we go. Lovely. Thank you very much. Hopefully it doesn't crash again. And the frame rate has gone to hell. Yeah, this happens every single time I go into a new map, by the way. You should be able to see it on the video. It's... Wow, you know, it's kind of gone a little bit crazy. So we have to go to the options menu, go to settings, go to graphics, apply, and then that sort of recovers the frame rate for the most part, and then we can play the game again. But as I said, that is it. There's like 5 maps, and this is all you do. This is it. I mean, this is all you do the entire time. And you might think, well, that sounds like something a free mod would offer. That sounds like something, say, The Hidden would offer. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But that's a free modification. If that was to become a premium product, you would maybe expect a little bit more from it. And I don't think it's entirely unreasonable to expect more from this. But this is a $17 game that we know is going to end. I don't really want to even take this. I'm terrified to take it. But we're going to take it anyway. We know it's going to end. And yet, there's so little to it. That's what freaks me out about it. There's so little to it. It's a nice concept, but it's really poorly executed. It lacks depth in pretty much every way. Where is this guy? He's around here somewhere. As long as I can shine the light on him, he'll die, but he could be in the rafters, he could be anywhere. And it is a little bit terrifying. I don't admit. It is a little bit terrifying. We're just trying to find ourselves an artifact here. But yeah, this is all there is to it. What a shame. Oh, he's right there. I saw him right there. Someone's probably behind me now. Oh, yeah, I see ya. I see ya. You gotta try and catch him. Oh, and you've got to keep moving as well, because otherwise your light will go out, and then you're dead. Again, nice idea, but where's the rest of it? Is what I have to say. Ah, I'm dead. Where is the rest of it? It needs more. It needs so very much more. I mean, what's going on? Is there any lore? Is there any story? No. I'd love to know what happened to this world here. You know, it's actually kind of intriguing, but we never get to find out. Maybe we'll get that at the end, but that requires 200 million player deaths, which is not going to happen. Let's be honest, it is not going to happen. It's not a particularly great looking game. It does have some nice aesthetic design choices. Some of these levels are really quite cool, sort of post-apocalyptic. But, I mean, this is full texture resolution right here. Yeah, not that impressive, is it? Not exactly. That's a little bit concerning. That's full texture resolution. I can't imagine what the rest of it is. So it's not a particularly great looking game. It doesn't have to be. Oh, it is a horror game after all. It doesn't have to be the world's best looking title. And it is reasonably grim and dark and grimy, although I feel that they hide a lot of the terrible quality texture work underneath light bloom and fog effect. But this is a nice little project that would be good if it was free, you know? And it's kind of especially true when you're asking people to pay for something which is very experimental, something which is very much going to end. At least that's their plan anyway. And what's the purpose in it ending? That's what I get. That's what I don't get. What does that add to the experience? Like, do we value our deaths? No. There's 200 million of them. And I don't think individual players are really going to value that all that much. That seems highly unlikely. It doesn't seem to really add much to the experience. It's an odd idea. It's like, why did you do that? Now, that's the question that I have to ask the developer. Like, why? What was the purpose in you putting that death count in? Does it add anything? I don't think so. I don't think it adds much to the game at all, really. It doesn't change the way that I play it, and I don't think it's going to change the way that other people play it. So, to have such a restriction, you've got to have a justification for it. You've got to have a real reason. And I'm going to be honest, I like this idea of community progression, I suppose you can call it. It's been done before. There's a game called Abyss Odyssey, which does this, which I thought was really kind of cool. Yes, I see you. Absolutely, I see you. There you go. Hello. It's a weird little game of cat and mouse. It's a little bit better when there's 5 people in, because you really can't do this all that often. There's probably someone behind me as well in there. Yeah, there you are. And Abyss Odyssey counted the number of times that the final boss had been beaten and unlocked new abilities and content as it went. That was a cool idea. I'd like to see more of that. I think that would work really, really well. But I don't think what they have added to this game really serves a practical purpose. I don't think so. I really don't. And that's kind of a shame. And I think it's going to put a lot of people off, too. It's an interesting gimmick, because it's one of those gimmicks that I think they hoped would sell the game. The problem is, I don't think it does. And I really think that it would have been better not having it, and a focus being put on actually developing the rest of the mechanics. No? What else is there to do other than this? You know, you've played about an hour of this game, and you've seen everything the game has to offer. Which is a shame. It really is. Because it's an interesting concept, but for this price in particular, I can't possibly recommend it. If it was $5 maybe, and they'd at least spent some time developing more mechanics and things that you could do to enhance the depth of the experience, then maybe. But as it stands, it is effective at times as horror. I will give it that. This game can be pretty scary if you're in with some good players. Especially if you watch that Doctor Who episode. You know, it can be really kind of terrifying. But that's it. You know, you just experienced a round that was like 6 minutes. That's the game. That's it. That's all it's got going for it. Where's the rest of it? This seems like the sort of thing that should certainly have been in early access and should not have left early access until they had absolutely fleshed out the amount of content on offer. Because as it stands, I can't possibly recommend this for the price. It's a curiosity at the moment, nothing more. It's the basic concept of a game. It's the framework of a game. It's an idea developed into what is basically a prototype that requires a huge amount of building upon, and yet the flock doesn't have that. And by the time it does get it, I have to wonder if there'll even still be a community for it. Because here's the key. Here's the bullet in the foot. They've created a game that actively drives off multiplayer purchases, and yet requires an active and healthy community in order to play properly. There's the double-edged sword, which they seem to have managed to fall upon. This advertising of a limited population and the fact that the game has a finite lifespan is keeping people away from it, and yet in order for it to fulfill its ultimate goal, its ultimate promise, and reveal its big surprise at the end, it needs a big player base. And it's never going to get one. I really don't think it will, unless it goes free, which maybe it will. Maybe if they want to get it to the end of its lifespan, eventually it will go free. But as it stands, it's a prototype student project, essentially. It's definitely not worth $17. Absolutely not. The Flock, ladies and gentlemen. Perhaps a failed experiment. Available for $17 or your regional equivalent on Steam. My name's been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.